Actually, that would have been pretty smooth.
It's all good. We can run it back.
Run what back?
I don't know.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Peace of Mind Project. Today we're going to be talking about family traumas and just the ways we can kind of just learn from them in a healthy manner and just kind of move forward from there. This is a big one. There's so many different areas to go to from this. Like,
Listen, you was talking about learning from it. I'm still trying to figure out that lesson.
Yeah,
no, honestly,
this is a trigger point. I'm not gonna hold. This is a little
figure that
triggering a little bit.
Yeah, because I think about for myself, like, even before I was even get to anywhere mentally with my family or like in a better position, like seeing them as human beings, I'm gonna start off was like probably one of the hardest things to do. Like seeing my parents as like other people and like people that went through life the same way I'm going through life right now. You know, and I'm like, that alone makes me think about them like in a different light, just give them a lot more grace. Cause I'm like, all right, imagine if my own children, you know, I was trying my best in whatever capacity. Not saying that all our parents are always trying their best, you know, make it seem like that. Cause sometimes it may, you know, come off like, all right, come on, you know, but like, I was seeing this for myself. I'm like, dang, if I'm trying my hardest to give them from the perspective that I know, and they're like not responding to it the way I expect them to, and you just kind of, all your cards are kind of gone. It's like, all right, well, how am I going to, you know, what am I going to do next? You know, and how am I going to approach it?
Nah. I think for me, like, it was really hard to see my parents as like people, I guess. Like, yes, you know, we're all human, whatever. But like growing up, seeing those people as like just like they have their own stuff to deal with. Like, you know, now, yeah, I got a lot more insight about like all the stuff that they was going through. But growing up, I was like, these people don't like me for real. Like, no, something is happening here. Like, I know you decided to have kids, but did you really decide on me? Because it was just like, there's just so much things that I feel like they didn't get growing up. That like, yes, they're doing the best that they can. They're doing whatever to like make sure that they're giving me the life that like they see fit. But in that, I don't think they realized how much harm that it was also causing me. Granted, I didn't have the tools at the time to like be as expressive about it. But it was just like, nah, these people don't mess with me for real.
Yeah.
They don't get me. They don't understand. They don't want to take the time. Like, I can't even tell them. So it was hard to humanize them. It was very hard to do that. So like I agree. I think becoming a therapist really helped me and like gaining that perspective. But prior to, it was difficult to do that.
Yeah.
I'll definitely even say I agree 1000% with what he said. Because for the longest time, and this is like, I'm going to be so honest, and I told my mom this too, we had like discussions and we're still kind of working through that. I used to think my parents hated me. Like it wasn't just like, oh, you don't like me. Oh, you're using me to bring the remote. It literally,
The remote?
yeah. I struggled with depression for several years because I genuinely thought my parents hated me. Like, I thought they did not like me. I thought that they didn't love me. I thought that I was just here on whim and they're just making do. So for the longest time, I struggled so much with like myself and then also my relationship with them. And I like how you said becoming a therapist has helped you. I think that for me, especially when you're younger, obviously everything, the world is crashing down. You get an F, oh, the world is crashing down. You can make it up. The more that I've grown as a human being and as a person is just as me, I've come to understand. I won't even lie. I have conversations with my friends, how I say like, it's crazy how the things they were saying was actually kind of true. Like I should have thought they
Oh
true.
my gosh, please.
It's true
No,
though.
but it's so
It's true.
I think coming to this space where like I'm an adult now, so everything that they've said to me before where I'm just rolling my eyes, like you don't love me, you hate me, I'm starting to see like, I get it.
Oh my God,
you
you're
said
on
it
my
in
side.
love. Like you,
But you was inside.
the way you did it wasn't right. It wasn't proper, but like
Yeah.
everything was coming from a place of wholesomeness, like purity, like wanting me to be good or X, Y, and Z. So you saying that, I related to it and it was kind of like a jump because it takes me back to emotions. Like my parents hated me is what I really thought for the longest time. Yeah.
It's thinking about it too like that. It's like, I always struggle with understanding where my parents were coming from because they always painted they always painted themselves as this perfect person. Like, I was the top of my class. I was doing X, Y, and Z. Like, no one can tell me anything. Like, I was ahead of the game. Like, I was like, come on, bro. What you mean? So that pressure when I was younger was now put on me that I have to be the head of the game. I have to be at the top of my class. I have to make sure I'm almost perfect.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, dang, like that's so much pressure. Cause like, and then they like, yo, I'm not perfect and I'm not you. So like trying to compare myself to you, there's like this standard that you've placed on me. It's like, I can't meet that. And the thing that I've tried to meet that, but it's like the more that I try, I feel like the more that I failed at trying to meet that because like you put this expectation on me and the whole killers, I felt like you were lying sometimes at the time. Like sometimes you're not even top of the class, but you put that pressure on me for me to be great. And I had to understand that sometimes like where our parents came from, they came from wherever they like, whether you're Nigerian or wherever in Africa you're from, like, for example, for me, my parents came from Nigeria and then and they came here to America. So they had to do a lot to put themselves in the position to be great, to do things and help us make sure that us as kids were good as well, to be stabilized in this country. So like when they put that pressure on me, I'm like, dang, they're like, why is there so much stress? Why is there so much pressure on me to do X, Y, and Z? But when I think about it, it's like, they don't want us to be in that same position that they were in. And it kind of hurts them like, dang, like, I understand that, but it's like the way you went about it was a little, it hurt a little bit. Like, and I'm not going to lie, like the way my parents went about it, like it made me not like school. Like I hated going to school. I hated like asking my parents questions about school, just the way like they would approach it, the way they would teach it and show me to come at me. This was like, dang, it made me struggle in school. And it made it hard for me to actually excel because I'm like, dang, like you made me feel like a certain way towards it. So now like when I approach it, I automatically feel like, damn, like I'm about to fail because of how the approach was going on. It's like, so like I had to like really like keep that in mind. Like every time I went to take a test, every time I went to class, like, dang, like if I don't do this, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to pass it. But then I had to change my mindset towards it. Like, then like, you are capable. You are good enough. You can pass. Don't let your past struggles like mess you up. It's a lot, dog. Like I'm not gonna hold you. It's a lot.
I'm like, because
Nah, for
looks
real.
like you need a session.
You said like you grew to hating school. I remember so vividly, my father would, when we were younger, we couldn't watch TV. There was just certain things that it was just a lot of stuff. But I remember vividly, like he'll give us a reward of, if we read a book and we would write a summary for him of what the book was, he would give us like $5 or $10 or something like that. And I would try my best to try and read a book and I would like, but I could never finish the book because like at the time with school and everything, I couldn't do it. And right now in my big age, let me just sum it up. I'm landing right now. I hate reading. And it sounds like, what do you mean you hate reading? Like I'm a therapist. I do enjoy learning. I love learning. I love learning stuff, right? But I hate reading. You cannot pay me to read a book. I can never complete a book. It's something I've always struggled with about my life. And as I really sit and thought, it's because at a young age, I was kind of forced to read. Like, okay, you get extra TV time if you do this. You'll give you $5 if you do this. The incentive was off. I do not like reading because of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now that you're saying that, like, that actually makes so much sense. Like, I don't think I've ever put it in that way of just like, yeah, I read here and there, but it does feel like I have to put in so much effort to have to read something and sit down and actually do it. And it's because like, my parents did the same thing. It was just like, you need to go read. You need to go this. If you don't do this, how can you get it? Like, they just put so much pressure on just being like academically successful or very just like scholarly in some regard. That like, I mean, granted, for me personally, I still do like to be a little scholarly, but I wanted to find that for me. Yeah. But like, I've never really put the 2 and 2 together of just like, having a space or an environment that like really forced me to do those scholarly things. Like, I don't want to do them now. Or it takes a lot of effort for me to do them now because like they place those like conditions on me like, oh, if you don't do this, then you're not a good girl kind of thing. And I'm like, bro, like, why? It's summertime. I want to go outside. Yeah. Why are you telling me I need to be here and be reading 3 to 4 books? Like, can you be for real?
Yeah. And honestly, I'm just thinking back to all the experiences that I had growing up. Because I came from a household where it was like you can watch TV on the weekdays. You can only watch TV Saturday, Sunday. Like Monday through Friday was just you have schoolwork, you do schoolwork,
She missed all the good
And
shows
then-
during the week.
I'm like, no, honestly, I realized that I did because a lot of these, like, a lot of movies that, like, are, like, staples for, like, you know, the community, everybody understands it.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, oh, yeah, you know, I watched when I was younger. In my head, I'd be like, dang, I don't even know what the movie is.
That's
You know,
like
I'd be like,
Disney love that 7 Monday on Central.
yeah, you
And
know,
the
like,
movies,
I didn't see a lot of them because I couldn't watch TV Monday through Friday. And it just came to the perspective, to the point where even on the weekends, it's like, there's so much to watch. There's so much you want to do that is like, you don't even end up catching everything. So just imagine all that from K through 12 is like, I missed a lot of shows, just missed a lot of everything, you know, and then we weren't really the ones that could like go outside or like go to, cause we lived
listen,
in a neighborhood that wasn't, to my parents, the neighborhood wasn't the safest. But now looking back, I'm like, bruh, y'all just didn't want us outside.
Yeah.
Like, cause the neighborhood was fine, you know, and because we weren't outside, they had probably antagonized us a little bit more because they're like, why are these people just away from everybody else?
Yeah.
But like, like y'all said, it just added so much pressure to learning that like, even right now, like as someone who enjoys reading, when I'm reading, I'm always thinking like, dang, if I don't remember everything that I've read in this book, then I didn't read the book.
Oh my God.
Yes.
And it's like,
Yes.
no, you know, because when you're reading the book, the goal isn't to memorize everything. The goal is just to learn from it, right? And then just keep going from there. That's not going to be every single page. But because I've been programmed to where it's like, oh, no, I got to memorize everything. I have to be able to regurgitate all this. I have to be able to, you know, it just adds so much unnecessary pressure that even makes me, someone who likes reading, not able to do it, you know? But like, I think something big that y'all said was that like, they were trying to get us to be the best version of ourselves. Of course, not in the healthiest way, right?
Yeah.
But that was the goal, right? And that was the angle. And I think what really helped me with like the humanization of parents is like how, because I don't want to reciprocate, I don't want to replicate the same thing, you know, with my own kids, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, it was always like, all right, if I understand that they had good intentions, then come off the way that I intended it to. What was that disconnect between them and us?
I mean, I feel like the disconnect comes from like, you're trying to implement like your upbringing and your upbringing was in a place that's not here.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to implement your upbringing from Nigeria in the US. And that's not something I'm seeing when I leave this household. So like, you're trying to get me to do things as it relates to like what you grew up with, but baby, like that's not my experience. That's not what I'm having to go through. And you're making it 10 times harder for me to like get right here and be me here by implementing some of those things that you had growing up. The conditions are not the same.
Not at all.
Like the environment is completely different. What's acceptable here versus what's acceptable there are two different things. They're not going to beat me for making a mistake at school. If that's what happened to you, cool. I'm sorry that's what it was. Granted, maybe it builds character. I didn't experience
I don't
it.
think so.
Listen,
Sometimes
and honestly, truly, like at my big age now, sometimes I'm like, I don't regret the beatings I got because it was like character development at the same time. Like, you don't have to do it like how you did it, but like, I get it, character development. But yeah, it's just like, you're trying to bring me up on teachings and like tips, procedures, tools, or whatever that you grew up with in a country that I'm not existing in. So it's hard for me to go about my life thinking that I have to operate by these rules and those rules aren't reinforced in my current environment. And that's where a lot of disconnect happens. That's where a lot of disconnect happened for me because it's like I'm operating based off like what my parents are telling me at home. But then when I get to school, my teachers are telling me otherwise, or my teachers are praising me for like the work that I'm putting in. So I feel like I have to keep doing this, even though I know it doesn't make me feel good or it's hard for me. Like it puts a lot of pressure on me.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think for me, that's where a lot of disconnect happened because it's like, it's just a lot of conflicting messages, honestly, truly. Like, there's so many things happening. There's so many pieces to the puzzle. You want me to do this. I'm getting praised for this. If I don't do this, I get scolded for this, but then I'm getting praised for this in certain areas, but not at home. Like, it's too much. And I'm sad because like, where do I fit in the picture? Where does what I want fit in? Where does like how I see myself fit into the picture? There's no space for that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about, I want to say like, what I've learned from like watching my parents like go through in life and them being like in their country, the way in Nigeria, and then us growing up here, I've learned that my parents, they're a lot of trauma dumping. It was like what they experienced from their parents. Like, this is what they had to go through. So like, they thought like, okay, this is how life is supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to be. Like, I'm structured to do this. So now I'm now going to take what I've learned from my parents and I'm going to implement it now into my kids. And it's like this different, like you learned that from a place where like you guys, your parents probably hurt. So now they dumped it on you. And so now like, okay, since you didn't really heal from it, now you're going to dump it on us. And it things like, we're going to learn the same way. And it's just like, I feel like generation after a while, it's like, first of all, we weren't born there. So like how y'all went through things, it's not how like I'm going to experience it. I'm in a different place right now. And it's just like, you want me to experience that way. And I see where you're going with it, but it's like, I can't learn that way. I can't accept that thing. Cause at the end of the day, that's doing more damage towards me. And like, I can't excel because like now, like, I feel like what you're experiencing, it's like, it seems bad. Cause the way you're throwing it at me, it's like, dang, like you went through a hard, like childhood. And so now, like, now you're implementing it to me because you feel like it works. But it's like, it doesn't work. Like, the same plan that works for A will not work for B. Same way the plan works for B won't work for C. So how your life was set up, it's not going to work for me. So, like, you have to really, like, figure out, like, how is it going to work for me? Like, you have to heal from a lot of things. Like, you can't come and sit here and tell me, like, oh, yeah, I was doing X, Y, and Z. So now you need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, what if I don't want to do X, Y, and Z? What if that doesn't work for me? So like, cause I always learn like a lot of parents want to like, they want us to be doctors, lawyers, do all these great things. And I'm like, what if I don't want to do that?
I have
You know
a
what I'm saying?
question.
It don't work.
I have a question, but Selena, I feel like you have something you wanted to say.
I have so much to say. I don't even know. I don't even.
No, it's so deep. Like, I'm holding back from actually crying right now.
Yeah.
This hurts right now.
No,
I'm
bro, it's a
holding
lot. It's
back
definitely a
from
lot.
tears.
Yeah, I'm holding back from crying right
As
now.
we're talking about our parents, and you were mentioning a lot, like that's the reason why generational traumas, and at least what I believe, generational curses exist. Because I think about the experiences that I have experienced with my parents and everything we're discussing. And I have siblings. I have 4 other siblings. And the stark difference between how I have viewed my life, my interactions with my parents are so different, significantly different from my siblings, to the point that even some attributes or some things that I see that my parents have tried to force within me, which I'm sure they tried to force within all of my siblings that are older, I see it play out in my siblings' life, but they don't even recognize it. They don't even notice some of what I call unhealthy or dysfunctional things that are happening in their lives. Why? Because it's been ingrained. So they're living their life out, whether married or in this established position, holding these values that for the most part, yeah, our parents, they did their best. Like everything came from a good heart. So yeah, you're successful, X, Y, and Z, but at what cost?
It's the cost.
But at what cost?
And the thing is, before you ask your question, I wanted to say something like, it really like, was like came to me like, there's a lot of things when it comes to trauma, like, but also know when you have siblings, that the trauma and the expectations is also different from the firstborn daughter to the firstborn son to the middle child to the last one. Like, there's an expectation at each place in your life when you're born, and your parents expect you to do certain things. So it's like when you don't meet those expectations, it's now almost like, dang, am I failing as the firstborn son? Am I failing as the firstborn daughter? Am I supposed to be doing X, Y, Z to lead as an example for other people? Because if you're not doing those things, they look at you like, what's going on? What are you doing? Those questions start to come up. So it's like, dang, like they start comparing to like, oh, X, Y, and Z is doing this. Yeah, your cousin is doing this. Or your friend is doing that. What are you doing? You're supposed to
go
be.
and get them.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, dog.
Go and get them.
It's crazy. Like how am I supposed to? I'm out here just trying to figure it out as well. Like, but it's like that expectation is so heavy.
Yeah.
So like, like sometimes I feel like people go out and do it just because they don't want to feel that pressure no more, but you end up making a mistake at the same time. Like you said, at what cost? Like, I'm going to go do it. Yeah, I did it. But like, is this something that I want to do? Or is it, I did it because you wanted me to do it? And to just to feel that satisfaction. So it's like, it's hard.
No, I resonate with that so heavy because as the firstborn daughter, like I see it in myself even now. Like sometimes I feel like I do stuff because it's like, it's just like so deeply ingrained in me that like, I just feel like I kind of have to, like it feels like second nature. Like I remember I had this conversation with my cousin when we were growing up. Like why am I 12 and I'm in the kitchen? Moving it up, trying to make sure I'm making dinner for my parents before they get home, because that's what a good daughter would do. I'm making sure the kitchen is, I'm 12. I'm doing housemaid, making sure the kitchen is clean because I don't want to hear from my parents when they get home. And then, like, you know, my cousin is also getting compared to me, like, oh, you see Bookie's doing this for her parents. Like, what are you doing for us? And it creates this unnecessary competition.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to your point, like, sometimes I feel like I have to do those things to alleviate the pressure that, like, I kind of place on myself in a way to, like, also fulfill those expectations. Like, I recognize that those expectations might not ever go away, and I might always put that pressure on myself, but, like, I feel like I have to work a lot harder to be able to, like, go against that. So, like, it's in my innate nature to just, like, help people even at the expense of myself. And I will do that so often until the point that I burn out. But, like, I have to catch that. I have to work really hard to catch that.
Yeah.
I have to work really hard to catch that. And I didn't even realize that, like, girl, you're doing firstborn daughter things right now. Like, what do you want? What do you need? How can you take care of yourself? Like, yeah, it's cool to take care of people. I like doing that. But at what expense? To your point, like, at what cost to me? And, like, I don't think I was ever really taught of what it looks like to, like, have that space to take care of myself, because my parents never did that.
Yeah.
I never seen what that looked like for them. So it's something that I've had to, like, really kind of, like, reframe, shift, challenge to just do the opposite.
Yeah. And, you know, like, I think hearing everything that we've all just said, I resonate with it a lot. And it just makes me think, because, like, growing up, I don't know why, but I've always been one that, like, instead of, like, getting frustrated with the way my parents were, I've always tried to really understand why. Like,
Even as a kid?
even when I was younger, like, for some reason, I've always looked at my parents and I've always just been like, all right, why are you doing this? But yeah, like, I used to really write my dad, like, letters to talk about what was going on in the home, you know, like, just to see what his mindset was, you know, but he never responded to them. He literally would just stop talking to me for a while, because the letters, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the letters would be pretty detailed and be, like, in depth about everything, and then in depth about how I feel about it. So it's like, all right, like, you know, I'm coming from the mindset that, like, all right, like, you know, if I'm a father and my son wrote me a letter expressing how he's feeling,
Yeah.
I'd be like, dang, like, my son really feels like this. Let's talk about it.
How could I not see that?
You know, like, let's talk about it. Like, let me at least, like, talk to him, you know?
Yeah.
And when we were all speaking, it just kept on reminding me of that really being one of the biggest things, like, when it comes to just not our relationship with our parents, but just relationships in general, that it's like, if you're, like, we'll look at it from a therapeutic perspective, right? It's like, what's the first thing that we have to do in therapy? It's like, you have to build a relationship with this person. You know, like, you have to come to some level of a similar understanding with this person, because when you get to those difficult conversations or those difficult situations, it's your relationship with that person that it's going to fall back on for them to be able to bounce off and understand the perspective you're trying to come from, or at least give you the grace to try to understand where you're coming from, right? And I think that's something that's been very missed in our relationships with our parents, where it's like our parents just see us as, like, products that they want to optimize, right? But it's like, I'm not a product, you know, I'm not an iPhone 15 that needs an update. I'm a human being that, you know, that you can talk to, you know? So it's like, explain to me why you're trying to teach me X, Y, and Z, you know? Talk to me like somebody who is going to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
And then when I do make those mistakes, don't shoot me in the foot, you know, like, educate me and help me to move forward from this, you know, like, talk to me the way you're talking to me now that I'm an adult, you know, now that you kind of see that I'm not a vagabond like you thought I was going to be. You see that I'm somebody that's doing something. It's like, all right, you know, talk to me like that from then, because then I'll be more open to you about, like, where my mindset is at, you know? And it's like, because I don't really think that, because I think we all can see that right now they may have been trying to come from good intentions, but the product, the way they came about it wasn't the best.
That delivery was crazy.
You know, because
delivery was nuts.
Yeah, because they didn't try to relate, you know, like, they didn't try to understand that, like, all right, this kid is going to make mistakes, you know, like, let me be the guiding force whenever they do make those mistakes, as opposed to punishing them and just, you know, adding punishments that have no relation to the, you know, to the problem that I did. And now I'm stuck here just thinking, like, all right, I got beat. They didn't tell me why I got beat. I kind of know why I got beat, but, like, getting beat isn't about to stop me from doing that. I don't have a better understanding of that. So my 12-year-old self is just like, all right, my parents beat me because they don't like me, you know? Whereas they can explain to you, you know, they can talk to us, like, you know, relate to us, you know? So it's like, for me, it's like, that's something I always try to think about, you know? It's like, all right, my parents may not have done it, and I'm not going to keep on harboring on them, right? But for me to not continue this process with my own kids, it's like, all right, I need to understand that they are human beings, and I need to be able to relate to them, not just enforce things on them, because that relation is what's going to really motivate them to, you know, sustain it. So that's just what I've been thinking about when, you know, with just everything that we've been saying.
I feel like that brings up this piece of like, especially like as we're talking about like how to heal from family trauma or even just like familiar hurt. I think it's also important to just kind of recognize, like, I don't think some parents realize, or even just like caregivers, guardians, whatever you got to experience, but like, I don't think they realize, like, some of them just were not safe spaces for us. And it's like, it's really hard to be open and honest about how I'm feeling about certain things if I can't feel safe with you. But I think to your point of just like, as I've gotten older, like, I can't fault them for not implementing like emotional support in the way that I needed when they didn't have the tools to do that for me. That doesn't excuse in any way, shape, or form just like the yelling or the derogatory statements, calling me out my name. Like, it doesn't excuse any of that. But I can experience you as, in my age now, like I can experience you as a human and recognize like you didn't have the tools to be the emotionally supportive person that I needed you to be for me at that time. And I think that that's just like a journey that like is constantly going.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I constantly have to remind myself of, because a lot of the things that my parents do now, even right now, like sometimes it still hurts. Like sometimes like I'm still having to work through some of those things. But I think to your point, like just staying in the mindset of like, they don't have tools.
Yeah.
They don't have the tools to give me the support that I need or to respond to me the way that I need. And I can't fault them for that. So I think that's like, you know, just kind of humanizing them in that part. But then it's kind of up to me to like do more of the work to just respond to that in a way that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
That also gets draining. That also gets
does.
tiring because it's like, it's a lot more work that I have to do. But that's what I can control.
Yeah. And
because I can't change them.
And you made a really good point, because it's like, you know, meeting them where they're at, right?
Yeah.
But then also it's like I also want to be mindful of understanding that like all of our parents aren't going to respond the same way. You know, it's like, like for example, for me, I'm fortunate to be able to talk, you know, to be able to talk to my parents now, right, and get better understandings of the experience up to this point now. Some parents aren't going to always be that open or receptive to their kids, you know, even at their older age, to say like, okay, I can understand where you're coming from with this, and this is where I was trying to come from with that. You know, we can't really necessarily expect that. So I think that's why it's important to, you know, come back on what you just said, because it's like at the end of the day, it's more so for us, and that healing aspect, we have to find a way to personalize it, because at the end of the day, our parents, the people that caused the trauma, may not respond the way we expect them to, even up to this point, you know, and that doesn't mean the healing stops at them, right? It's just, we just need to find a different route, you know, a different angle.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I was also going to say that on top of everything that you guys have talked about, I as well think it's super important, the awareness, as you kind of mentioned a little bit.
What's happening, sis?
I'm smiling as a defense mechanism because this hurts.
Oh, no.
No, it's what you're like, whoa. That was cool, though.
Yeah, we definitely gonna keep that.
That was cool, though.
It's a defense mechanism because the conversation we're talking about is not easy. So all I can really do is smile. But I completely agree. And I completely agree, because I think that the first level is awareness. What I tell my clients all the time, there are two things that happen when you go through trauma. So when you're thinking about your generational traumas, you're either one, doing everything in your might to run against it. Like, I'll never be like my folks. I'll never be like them. Right. Or you kind of sit in this pit of despair because that's all you've kind of been accustomed to. So when you're aware of the processes, even as you're growing and you're starting to understand, oh, this person's a human being. The intentions were good. The application was just poor, X, Y, and Z. You have this goes into what I was going to say, the responsibility and choice to make it different. So it's not about, oh my gosh, I have kids now and I don't ever want them to feel like how I felt. It's more so, well, what are pieces that I can take from my past? Like there are things that were dysfunctional, unhealthy versus things that are more healthy that I can start applying to my life, not just with kids, but when you think about your relationships. I know for a long time, I struggled with healthy relationships with people because I didn't know what it was like to be in just communion with people because I didn't get that when I was younger. I didn't know how to talk. I was super anxious. Even it was very dysfunctional to the point that I even thought I had BPD because it was so borderline. It was like, why am I so like, and it took a while for me to learn that and be able to process and understand, no, it's not me. It's because of things that I've experienced, but I have the ability to make the choices for what I want right now. The friends that I want, it's not about whether they like you. Do I like them? Do I choose them? Is this healthy for me? Does this make me feel good? Is this productive? And that's something that I feel like we all should think about. But this topic is definitely something that we should not just like, this is not a one episode topic. I do feel like we should talk more. Maybe you'll see a tear fall down.
Yeah.
You see 2 tears fall down, you know?
Right.
Listen, it might be across the board.
And I show you that on camera, but I mean, you might get it.
You know, it's like she said, it's definitely an episode that it's going to have to be multiple. Honestly, we could talk about this for as long as it goes. You know, there's so many different aspects, you know. And like today we more so touched on like just the expectations aspect and like, you know, more so in like the academic space when it comes to like, you know, just us being African and just the experiences we have in that sense. But like outside of even being African, is like, regardless of all cultures, it's like there's slight or major disconnect between the parents and the kids, you know, and it's definitely something that both parts will need to kind of work on to be able to improve the relationship and just improve the trajectory of kids and honestly break those generational curses, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think a huge thing to kind of take away is that the relational aspect is extremely important in our family relationships, especially, but just across the board, right? It's like being able to understand where somebody's coming from, whether it be a parent or a kid or a boss or a romantic partner, all of that gives so much more clarity on how you can move forward. And it takes away a lot of the space for your mind to create situations for you that honestly may not necessarily be what's really going on, you know? So it's just like moving forward, it's like even us as we, you know, if you aspire to become parents or things like that, it's like, want to be mindful of like, okay, like the relationship with these kids is going to be something that's extremely important to foster, you know, if I want them to get to where I want them to be and understand why I'm trying to get them to be there, as opposed to just treating them like a product, you know? But yeah, I think this was a great place to start as far as with this conversation, and definitely going to move forward and join us the next time on the
Part 2 coming soon, man.
Yeah, part 2 for this, definitely.